morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's minus 8 degrees, feeling colder in the wind. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. We'll get the latest on school openings today, as some are wondering whether March break might be affected in one way or another. We get the latest from Kevin Meisner.
The Elementary School Teachers Federation says the Ford government's back-to-school plan is inadequate and could contribute to a third wave of COVID-19. And Harvey Bischoff with the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation says the province won't reveal the metrics it's been using to determine if schools are safe to open.
So how do we know that this is actually safe, according to the medical experts, rather than just another political decision made around the cabinet table?
Education Minister Stephen Lecce says the province's reopening plan was based on advice from local medical officers of health as well as Ontario's top doctor. And he tells Breakfast Television the idea of cancelling March break this year is being considered. But Dr. David Williams will be making that call.
The decision on March break will be based on that expert advice, and I hope to announce it next week.
Now, the argument here is that allowing students a little more continuity in class learning and canceling March break would be further discouragement to travel and socialization over March break. Now, Ontario students return to class in person on Monday in all locations except Toronto, Peel, and York regions. In those locations, schools will reopen after the Family Day long weekend. I'm Kevin Meisner.
Moderna is blaming production problems for a 20% cut to this week's shipment of its COVID-19 vaccine to our country. News of another shortfall came just hours after Procurement Minister Anita Anand said she was confident Canada's vaccine deliveries will only get better going forward. A Moderna spokesperson tells the Canadian press the company remains on track to meet its contract to supply 2 million doses by the end of next month to Canada. City News Time, 9:02. British scientists are launching a test today to see if COVID-19 vaccines could be mixed and matched. The vaccines that are rolling out now require 2 doses weeks apart. Study participants will get 1 shot of AstraZeneca vaccine followed by the Pfizer dose or vice versa. Vaccines use different technologies. It's not clear if mixing them is going to work. If it does, it could help deal with vaccine shortages. City News Time, 9:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Lots of sunshine for us today and not as cold. The high near 0. The wind out of the west-northwest. It's a light wind, though. Becoming cloudy tonight, minus 11, and then tomorrow, periods of snow beginning in the morning, late morning, around 10 o'clock. 5 centimeters of wet snow possible, the high near 2. For today, the high, 0.
And right now in both Ottawa and Smiths Falls, it is minus 8, but it feels a bit colder in the wind. Ottawa Mission now accepting new clients after being placed on outbreak status after cases of COVID-19 were identified there. According to an email from the shelter, the mission is now accepting new clients provided they have not been in the shelter in the past couple of weeks. The mission's capacity is still limited, so new clients will be diverted to the Tom Brown Arena if that capacity is exceeded. City News Time, 9:03. The president of the Tokyo Olympic Organizing Committee is under pressure to resign now after saying women talk too much in meetings. 83-year-old Yoshiro Mori, Japan's former prime minister, made the comment when he was asked about the presence of a few women on the Olympic Committee board. Mori has since apologized, and the International Olympic Committee says it is not going to ask him to resign. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Good, bad, or complicated.
There's no news in Ottawa and the Valley he won't talk about.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thursday, not quite Friday. But you can see Friday from here. Good morning. This is the Rob Snow Show, Rogers TV, City News. Another busy morning in the news game. We've got you covered. On Thursday, we really like to zero in on some local issues, and a big one lately is planning. What's being done at City Hall, the urban boundary, and this peculiar, to be kind, this peculiar decision to let a parcel of land near Carlsbad Springs be developed by the Algonquins of Ontario and Taggart, because this was a decision kind of made on the fly, came out of nowhere. This is land that was looked at by the city staff. It did not score well for development for a number of reasons. By the city's own admission, it lacks infrastructure. It's nowhere near public transit, and yet it was allowed in. To the astonishment of many, including, now we learn, some Algonquin chiefs. Kate Porter with a nice scoop this morning locally. For example, the chief of Kitigan-Zibi says this is not reconciliation. It's reconciliation as in wreckage. WR. And that real, in quotation marks, real Algonquins are being left out of this whole process. So this farce is totally blowing up in the council's face. And I will tell you as well, there is another issue. It's kind of boiling right now. It's kind of simmering right now. It's related to this whole business of the urban boundary and the idea of this so-called gold belt to protect agricultural land from development. You wouldn't believe how that's going over with our farmers. Not well. I was on the phone with a local farmer this morning, and apparently this is the talk of rural Ottawa right now. They are not happy with what they think has been hatched behind closed doors at Ottawa City Hall. And this farmer told me that if we weren't in a pandemic right now, if not for COVID, just about every tractor from every farm in rural Ottawa would be parked on the lawn of Ottawa City Hall next week when all of this is supposed to come up for a vote. I have not heard so much frustration, so much anger. Well, I'm telling you, going back to the days of the landowners in Carleton County and amalgamation and signs in fields that said, back off, hands off my land and all that stuff. Ooh, they're hopping mad. But you see, this is what you get when you have a council that basically, what is it doing? What is it doing? It's just making it up as it goes along when it comes to planning decisions, ignoring the advice of its own staff. You know what? Listen, City Council, here's my advice to you. Okay? You've screwed up. Surely you have realized you've screwed up. This whole sad business at council, defer it. Defer it. Take some time, do some due diligence, listen for a change. There is really nothing wrong with hitting a reset button when it comes to this. So we're going to get into that issue in a big, big way this morning. Randall Denley. Randall has forgotten more than I will ever know when it comes to these issues. As you know, longtime City Hall columnist for the Ottawa Citizen, covers the Ford government these days for the National Post. So he's up first in about 5 minutes from now. And then we're going to keep it going after the 9:30 news with our City Affairs panel, former Bay Ward Councillor Mark Taylor and Fred Sherwin of the Orleans Star, both joining me this morning. It's the Rob Snow Show, so you're always in the middle of it during the talkback hour. We do that every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. Your calls, your opinions, hottest radio in town. 750-1310 is our call-in line. 750-1310, 613-750-1310. My email address is therobsnowshow@ottawa.citynews.ca. I'm on the vaccine story again today. I'm all over that again today. Man alive, what I wouldn't give for just a sliver of good news when it comes to vaccines. I know I'm hard on the government. I want the government to succeed. If the government succeeds, Canadians will be better off, okay? Don't get me wrong. But I do want to ask you about, if you've been following it, the issue surrounding this COVAX business. Are you familiar with how this is supposed to work? So COVAX was set up by the World Health Organization and something called Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. And the idea is we'll help the developing world get vaccines, poor countries that can't afford vaccines. And wealthy countries like Canada will put money into this fund, and Canada did. The Trudeau government poured $440 million worth of our money into this fund. And that money goes to buy vaccines. And poor countries can then get access to vaccines through this facility. And for Canada, for a wealthy country like Canada, it kind of acts like an insurance policy. If we need vaccines, we could tap this facility too. It kind of like making an insurance claim, if you will. But make no mistake, the whole idea is about helping the developing world, helping poorer countries get access to vaccines, not wealthy countries like Canada. And yet here we are. It's not even 2 months since the first vaccine doses went into the first Canadian arms. And you know what we're doing? We are already making, I guess you could say, we're already making an insurance claim. We're going to this COVAX fund and we're saying, those vaccines, yeah, we need them. Yeah, the sooner the better. We need them. What do you think about this? According to the news reports this morning, we're the only G7 country that is doing this. How do you feel about doing this? You know how I feel? I feel embarrassed. I feel embarrassed for Canada. I think it's just another sign of a vaccine program that's just gone right off the rails. Now, others, look, I called someone yesterday who knows a lot about this vaccine program, this COVAX program, and they told me they're not surprised at all that Canada is doing this. It's why Canada bought this insurance policy, if you will, in the first place. We paid for those vaccines. If we need those vaccines, and now we do, we have every right to make our claim on them. But I don't know. I remain unconvinced. I feel like, our government, the Trudeau government, it loves to hold itself up as some great global do-gooder, right? It's the whole Canada is back shtick. And with this move, I feel like our government is robbing from a program that was designed to help the developing world. And the whole thing kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth. But if you disagree, that's fine. Let's talk about it at 750-1310. I'd love to know where you come down on that one. COVAX, claiming vaccines from COVAX. That's not the only strange twist, let me tell you, when it comes to the vaccine saga in this country. Now, as you heard in our newscast, Moderna shipments being cut. First it's Pfizer, now it's Moderna. Well, hey, what are the two vaccines approved for use in Canada? Oh, Pfizer and Moderna. Yeah, isn't it great news? Great news. Sunny ways. The information about the Moderna shipments for Canada later this month, February 22nd, that week, all that information has been wiped clean from a government website that tracks all of this information. Aren't you starting to think just about any vaccine would be nice? Just about now. Hey, CanSino, how's that vaccine going for you? We have reports out of Israel this morning. Meantime, Israel is now vaccinating everyone over the age of 16. Can you imagine? A perfectly healthy 17-year-old Israeli can line up and get a vaccine. Here, we have so little vaccine doses, it's all we can do to get them into the arms of 90-year-old residents in long-term care homes. And if you want a revealing and frustrating read this morning, if you want your morning ruined, check out this morning's Montreal Gazette with a write-up on the realistic time frame for this vaccine plant in Montreal, the National Research Council facility that's under construction in Montreal. This year, you think that thing is going to open this year? December of this year? Not a chance. According to the experts quoted in that story. 6 months from now? No way. 10 months from now? Not a chance. More like 14 months from now. Think April of 2022. If we're lucky. If we're lucky, April 2022, some vaccines might roll out of that plant. But don't worry, Mr. Trudeau says everything is on track and ready to go. It's the Rob Snow Show on City News.
35,000 people are homeless each month.
It's devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major, major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big, big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past, being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day, and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022. For in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on Our Work. It's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Post-media columnist and author Randall Denley is back with us this morning here on the Rob Snow Show. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Well, you're very hard on City Council, I think deservedly so, for its decision when it comes to the urban boundary, but you go so far as to say they're abusing their power. Why do you say that, Randall?
One thing that's different about the official plan process they're going through right now, trying to establish the future of growth in Ottawa, is that the decisions aren't appealable anymore. And every time before now, if they did something that had no planning basis whatsoever, they could count on people taking to the Ontario Municipal Board, other developers or citizens, and they'd likely be overturned. But now they don't have to worry about that. They can do whatever they like. So even though the city's been through a process since 2019, laying out what they're going to do for growth, why, the guidelines are pretty clear. We want it to be close to the LRT, incremental expansion of suburbs that are already there, but grudgingly, that's the direction. So big reports have been written on this, many meetings have been held, and then last week, two committees sit down, work together, listen to 50 or so presentations on the latest report, get to the end and say, well, Thank you very much.
Yep.
Now, here's what we're really going to do.
Yeah.
There's this plot of land out in the East End near the Amazon headquarters, not much else out there, but it's owned by the Algonquins of Ontario. So let's just put that in. No planning rationale offered for it. It's just reconciliation. So we'll throw that in. That'll be about a third of the city's future growth land. And then, just weeks or last year, councillors have said, hey, look, we're not developing any good agricultural land. Carried. Excellent idea. So the staff go away. They don't look at agricultural land because the bosses say, don't develop it. Then the plan comes where the land would go, and they say, well, wait a minute. What about this agricultural land out by the Beausejour transit station? Well, councillors, you said not to develop that. Oh, no, but we should. It's near a transit station. So let's do that. It's like they're going in all directions, really. There's no consistency to what they're doing, and they're just making decisions on the fly. I don't think that's the way to develop a plan that's supposed to last us for 25 years.
I would like to ask you about, because, I'm not familiar with, say, the machinations of Algonquin Nation politics and everything that's going on there. But I did read with great interest this morning Kate Porter's story for the public broadcaster. And Dylan White Duck, who's the chief of Kitigan Zibi up near Maniwaki, says, quote, I believe there's more education that needs to be done with the city of Ottawa and their councillors, a body that was created as being awarded these types of lands that are rightfully unceded, rightfully the Algonquin nations and ours. I call it reconciliation, another chief said. He said he learned of the project when someone sent him a newspaper article about it. They're going to wreck any real opportunity to have reconciliation with the real title holders and the nation on whose land everything is sitting. Basically, these chiefs say the Algonquins of Ontario. It's not a real First Nations organization. I don't know. What do you think? You've written about it in the past. So.
I have written about them in the past, and it seems to be an organization, Algonquins of Ontario, that was created with the prime goal of having some entity who is willing to negotiate with the federal and Ontario governments to settle Algonquin land claims. But as that story pointed out, it gets complicated in a hurry because there are a lot of federally recognized Algonquin bands, most of which are in Quebec. But as far as they're concerned, Eastern Ontario, Algonquin land, hasn't proven easy to negotiate with those disparate groups. I think the government was happy to see somebody come forward and say, hey, we're the Algonquins. Perfect. Let's start talking deal. But there's a lot of complexity to it. It's not city council's zone. Clearly, they don't know much about it. And now they've stumbled into it because
they've really
the word
stepped
Algonquin, reconciliation.
Yeah.
Well, let's just approve this thing then.
Yeah, they've really stepped in it here, haven't they?
Oh, I think they have. And if they just keep going now, they're certainly not going to achieve the reconciliation goal, which is apparently the only one they have. So to me, they've got to find a way out of this. And the best way would be go back to what staff suggested. Let's look at this land over the next couple of years, see if there's a viable plan, a way to develop it, to make it all work, and we'll come back to you on that. It's not saying no or yes, and there's no need to say no or yes right now, but let's look at it in regards to planning. How would it fit with everything else we're doing, as opposed to just, hearing the word Algonquin and acting? That just doesn't make sense, and I hope it doesn't last through council's meeting next week. It's going to be a big about-face for Jim Watson if it doesn't, though.
I actually, I mentioned this in my opening remarks. I was on the phone with a farmer from the East End this morning who read he said, are you talking to Randall Denley this morning? And I said, I sure am. He said, well, let me tell you, if it wasn't for COVID, every tractor in Ottawa would be parked on City Hall's lawn next week. They are not happy about this Gold Belt plan in farm country.
Yeah, I'm hearing quite a bit about that, too, because that's another one, and it came from the staff direction, apparently, but it just came out of thin air. It hadn't been part of the discussion at all up to now. Mm-hmm. But then suddenly, here it is. Oh, we have the Gold Belt. Well, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So in effect, that seems to blanket sterilize all the land within this gold belt. So whatever it is today, that's what it will be. People, I know I've had a lot of response too, and people are worried that, okay, I've got a farm.
Yeah.
What if I want to sever a lot for my son or daughter? Will I even be allowed to do that? They think not. So I don't know whether they're right or wrong at this point, because it's kind of conceptual.
Yeah.
This is defended by saying, well, nothing changes. So, all this land is protected anyway. In which case I would say, so why are we doing this then?
Right. Yeah.
Just optics? Or?
Yeah. Gosh, it's not well thought out what this council is doing here. I mean, we're talking about the official plan here. I mean, this is supposed to be city policy for decades to come.
Yeah, it determines where people can live. It can determine the kind of housing they have.
Yeah.
It's a huge power that council's been given, and for years, municipal councils, and particularly ours, have been saying, oh, it's just outrageous that our democratic planning decisions can be overturned by an unelected provincial board. So, the years of lobbying finally won a response from this government that said, okay, well, fine. They can't appeal them. The minister still has to say yes or no to them, but they can't be appealed by other parties. And I think that's where to me, the abuse of power comes in, because if you know you don't have to defend your decision in some rational forum, you can just do anything you want because, we were elected.
Yeah, okay.
It's really discouraging that they've gone this far, this fast, and it leaves the public out of the loop, too, because the people who've been reacting have been reacting to what staff proposed. Nobody's had a chance to respond to the Algonquin lands or the switch out at Bowesville Station. The public meeting was over by then, so it'll go straight to council next week, and it'll be what it is. You couldn't make it much more obvious to the people of Ottawa that when it comes to planning, we just don't care what you think. To me, that's not the message you want to send as a city councilor, especially when you're getting, closer and closer to an election day.
We only have about a minute left, but the stay-at-home order was set to expire next week. What do you think?
Yeah, you can let it go, because he's talking about reopening the economy, and there's not much sense in saying, hey, we're going to reopen businesses, but stay at home. I mean, these two messages don't resonate together. So I think the stay-at-home order's going away, and there's going to be a lot of screaming about it. Angus Reid poll this week, Rob, showed that most people are happy with what we have now in Ontario in terms of restrictions, or they want more.
Okay.
So it's not going to be popular, but I think it's necessary.
Okay. Thanks, Randall. Great stuff. Yeah. Randall Denley, Post-Media columnist and author. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, February 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -8 degrees. In Smiths Falls, -7, but feeling colder in the wind. Here's what's making news this hour. A decision on March break is coming next week from the Education Minister. Stephen Lecce tells Breakfast Television this morning whether that week off is cancelled will be made on the recommendation of top medical officials. Both the elementary and secondary teachers have also questioned the reopening of schools province-wide. The province says it was top medical officials that formed that decision. Moderna is blaming production problems for a 20% cut to this week's shipment of its vaccine to our country. News of another shortfall came hours after the procurement minister, Anita Anand, said she was confident the vaccine deliveries will just get better going forward. A Moderna spokesperson tells the Canadian press the company does remain on track, though, to meet its contract to supply 2 million doses by the end of next month to Canada. The chief of the Kitigan-Zibi Nation has written a letter to the mayor and Ottawa City Council outlining objections to the Algonquins of Ontario request for land it wants to develop being included in the expanded urban boundary. Chief Dylan Whiteduck says in an opening line he has objections and concerns to the way the city is approaching reconciliation. He's demanding the city immediately consult with Algonquins on land development. As for the group Algonquins of Ontario, Whiteduck says that group is not considered a legitimate representative of their constitutionally held rights. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
More on city issues now. Joining us on the Rob Snow Show this morning, Fred Sherwin is the publisher of the Orleans Star. Good morning, Fred.
Morning, Rob.
Yeah, great to hear from you. Mark Taylor's a former city councillor for Bay Ward, Vice President of Resource Development, United Way Eastern Ontario. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, Rob.
Hope you're well these days, both of you. So, look, a big story is the development with Algonquins of Eastern Ontario and Taggart for this parcel of land near Carlsbad Springs, and what this says about the planning process for the city of Ottawa, which is something that does not happen overnight. Staff take a long time, look at all of the issues, look at all of these submissions. There are public delegations, there's committee work and debates, and then it comes before, well, in this case, the planning committee or one of the committees at City Hall, and just kind of out of the blue, this decision is made, and it catches a lot of people off guard, and now, as you just heard in our newscast, I mean, there are even questions about the legitimacy of this organization to speak on behalf of Algonquin First Nations at all. So, Fred, what do you think about how all this is played out so far? It's coming up before the full city council next week on Wednesday.
Talk about the proverbial opening up a can of worms, especially with this latest development. I mean, I don't see how council can approve it next week. I got a feeling they're going to have to defer and to give it further study, because there's all kinds of things at issue. I mean, one issue is possibly this being a sustainable community. But I think one of the things we might be looking at today or this morning is about the changing paradigm in Ottawa's workforce, right? And that's going to change the way we look at transit, development, a whole host of different issues. I just think it needs more time to study the whole works.
Yeah, I don't know how you can move forward if, say, you have the First Nation of Kitigan-Zibi saying, this organization doesn't speak on behalf of us, and it's on the Quebec side, and then you have Pigwaganagon, which is near Golden Lake, near Renfrew County, and it says it's wholly legitimate. I mean, yeah, you're right, Fred, opening up a can of worms. So What do you do in that?
Can you say court challenges?
Yeah. So what would be your advice, Mark, to your former colleagues who have to deal with this now?
Well, there's two ways to look at this, Rob. I mean, on the one hand, planning committee did not apply the planning rationale to this decision that is what is supposed to happen at planning committee, right? Planning committee is supposed to be agnostic to issues outside of the planning realm. So that, in that perspective, this decision didn't go the way it should have at planning committee. However, the other way to look at this is, regardless of that, if it forces or brings to bear at council a more fulsome discussion about how to include Indigenous land claims and Indigenous equitable use of land in our community into the planning process, then I think that's a good thing. And I also think that there are challenges with teasing one Indigenous group or another and saying, well, this one agrees and that one doesn't agree, because that applies a notion that all Indigenous communities speak with one voice.
Right. Yeah.
And that would be a tragic repeat of history if we were to think that way. So I think there's an opportunity here that council can capitalize on. But I agree with you, it's going to be much broader.
But can you do that in 2 weeks, though? Can you do that in 2 weeks? I mean, have a committee and then, a vote. Given all this new information, so. I mean, this story from Kate Porter this morning puts the whole decision-making process around this particular 445 hectares, I think, to a lot of people, probably in a whole new light. And if I was a city councillor, I'd have some second thoughts about the way I may have cast my vote at the committee level.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about the council and committee process, is it does give you that opportunity when something rises from committee to council, that if there's been more thinking or more public discussion on it, then's your opportunity as a councillor to say, you know what, I understand this better, I have more information now, or I have new thinking about this, and I want to enter into that discussion.
Yeah. So you used the word, Fred, defer. Why do you think that might be a good option for council at this point?
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about, like I said before, possible legal challenges. I would think legal counsel is going to have to weigh in with the potential issues that might arise by this challenge. So there's going to have to be more study. I mean, if I was sitting on council, I would want to take a sober second thought at this, and not sure in the few days we have between now and the next council meeting whether there's enough time to do that.
Yeah, I'm also, and I don't know if you're hearing this, Fred, say in your coverage in Orleans, but I took a call this morning from a farmer. The farmers are very upset about this idea for a gold belt.
Oh, they certainly are.
Yeah. So what are you hearing about that?
I'm hearing the same thing.
Yeah.
Their basic position is they don't want to be told what to do with their land, right?
Yeah.
But that is
it's very kind of pre-amalgamation, Carleton County, back off.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Well, a lot of them still are hurting from, there's a lot of older farmers out there that still remember what happened when they created the original Greenbelt. Farmland was expropriated, especially along the area south of Innes Road, down near Innes and Blair, and farms were taken away from people. I mean, I know someone who had a farm where in the Greens Creek area that was taken, that was appropriated from them. So yeah, there's a lot of memory there, a lot of history.
But again, it comes back to how do you make a decision like that without consulting farmers who are going to be most impacted by it? They feel as though this they've been totally left out of the conversation. Some of them only learned about it through the news media.
Yeah, and let's not forget, we're still in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
There's a whole issue on public consultations in the middle of a pandemic and how you handle that issue.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So Mark, what do you think about maybe everybody takes a deep breath and some more time to maybe think about, we're talking about the official plan here, right, Mark?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that process is always a long one, and there's always opportunities for more consultation. At some point, you have to feel that you've appropriately consulted everyone or given the opportunity for feedback. I do think, to Fred's point, the pandemic offers a special challenge, which might, challenge to consultation and the equitable distribution of understanding of what's going on. So, that might actually serve as a good rationale for saying, let's extend the window to this piece of work so that we can get to a space where we feel like we can authentically say we've consulted everybody, whether at the end of the day, they agree or don't agree.
Okay. I find this story interesting, and I'd like your take on it. And Fred, you can give us a sense of things in the burbs there in Orleans. The latest real estate numbers say a house in the city of Ottawa is now selling for an average price of $742,000. $742,000 average price. And my fear is that Ottawa is becoming a city that only rich people can afford. What's your sense of it in Orleans, Fred? The real estate market right now. Gangbusters.
A bit under the radar until I brought up the Ottawa Real Estate Board site and I started looking at the listings in Orleans. First of all, there's hardly any to begin with.
Right.
I think there's something like 6 or 7 listings in the entire community of Orleans. I'm looking at bungalows for $750,000. I think this is another result of the pandemic. The inventory is so low right now. People, all kinds of people are getting far and above their asking price for homes. There's bidding wars on properties. But my personal belief is there's going to be a correction.
Okay.
I personally would not be spending that much money for property with the possibility that once the pandemic ends and houses come back onto the market, the prices are going to end up going down because it's going to be a buyer's market, number one. Number two is because of the economic fallout of the pandemic, interest rates start to go up, and you're sitting on a mortgage, on an over-mortgaged property, you're going to have some issues as well. I personally would look at this in more of a longer-term type of thing than the short-term.
I mean, we're not quite Toronto yet, Mark, but goodness gracious. Yeah. I mean, $742,000 average, right?
Yeah, headed in that direction for sure. Yeah. Like house prices are, of course, going to fluctuate with supply and demand in the market. And there's all of those very valid, kind of personal finance points that Fred brought up. I tend to look at that and be concerned because I think Ottawa should be a community that's affordable to everyone. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody, should or wants to live in a bungalow in the burbs kind of thing. But It should be a community where everyone can find a home that suits their needs, and that's important for health equity. It's important for community belonging, and that's where I think and I'm sawing an old log here, Rob, but that's where I think governments and its partners in the community sector have to work really hard to hedge against those surging prices with a supply of affordable quality housing. And that could be critical.
You have to make land available, too. It ties into our first topic as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But Rob, there's another issue at play here, too, that a lot of people don't realize. The impact market value reassessments were postponed from 2020 to 2021. And those market value assessments are based on the market values of homes, which are set by the selling prices of homes in a given area. So if you're living on the street and a home sells way above market value, or way above the asking price, that's going to affect everybody's taxes.
Okay.
Now, somebody might say, hey, that's great because, once we start to resell our place, maybe we'll get the same amount for our place that the neighbor just got for their place.
Yeah,
but when their assessment notices starts coming in the mail this year, there's going to be a rude awakening.
I think, to that point, Fred, a great question that if people are sitting there listening to this on the radio thinking, is this a problem for me or not? Ask yourself if you could afford to buy the house that you live in again today. And if your answer is no, well, then I think there's reason to be concerned about the topic.
Yeah, and I also, I worry about people who are, say 25, 30 years old and they want to buy a house. Not that they're buying a $742,000 house, but my gosh, what are you doing? You're buying a fixer-upper for $600 or something? Even to come up with a 10% down payment, you're talking $60,000. Who has $60,000, right? I mean, it's just...
But Rob, that's always been an issue. That's been an issue for the last couple of years.
Well, but it's only getting worse. It's only getting worse.
If you're 26, 27 years old and you're coming out of university with student debt, okay, and you're looking at buying a starter home that's about $300,000 or $400,000, and you need a $40,000 down payment. I mean, you either have to come from a rich family or win a lottery. There's no way when myself and my ex-wife bought our first house down in Old Ottawa South, that we would be able to afford the type of down payment that you're going to need now back then. Just there's no way.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Okay, but is Ottawa becoming a city for the wealthy? There's this term that took over the Toronto market. You have to drive till you qualify. Right. Yeah. And people are driving from Guelph to Toronto, like that's their commute, 2 hours each way. And do we really want people driving 2 hours into the city of Ottawa and then 2 hours home again?
No, absolutely not. And this is where I think we have partnerships with the federal government and other large landowners that we really need to explore when it comes to creating supply land that can serve as space for housing that is created affordably. And then by affordably, by the way, Rob, I don't necessarily mean subsidized, right? Like there's a continuum there. There's everything from heavily subsidized all the way up to, just, kind of held at almost like a rent control, market rent kind of, band.
And my goodness, gentlemen, we built a lot of houses. Right? I mean, in the last 10 years,
you see that every day.
Oh,
Rob.
man, it's crazy.
Quickly, one other issue is the lack of affordable housing, is the lack of affordable rental units.
Yep.
Because young people, if they can't afford to buy a house, they got to live somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. We're making some progress on that.
Well, that's also, Fred, it goes right to the point of, housing there has to be an appropriate diverse supply, right? This notion that everybody's got to live in a bungalow, so that we're just going to build a ton of bungalows and charge an outrageous amount of money for them, like that does not mesh with everybody's desire of where they want to live, how they want to live, and the market should respond to people's desires, not dictate them.
Okay, look, we'll stop here. We'll come back and talk about a few more things. Kind of big picture. What happens if thousands of public servants in Ottawa never go back to work? Or they only go back to work part-time? What does Ottawa look like then? What if that traditional Ottawa government worker doesn't even have to live in Ottawa anymore to do their job? Not because they're living in Renfrew, but because they're living in Sudbury or someplace. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to like the environment or to our bodies. We have like fun stuff, so like really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just like right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, probably we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, like in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of like full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business, at the same time still get myself on the map because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, like online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
I'm loving the discussion this morning. The big city issues. Mark Taylor, former city councillor for Bay Ward, Vice President of Resource Development, United Way, Eastern Ontario, and Fred Sherwin, the publisher of the Orleans Star. Don't you think that can you fit more than one elephant in a room? To me, the future of the city, the elephant in the room, is what happens if thousands of public servants never go back to the office, or they only go back to the office 2 days a week or 3 days a week. What is that going to mean for the city? What if that traditional Ottawa government worker doesn't even have to live in Ottawa anymore? What is that going to mean for our city? And do you get the sense that city officials have a handle on that right now? What do you think, Fred?
Well, number one, I don't think they have a handle on it.
Okay.
Number two is, there's a couple of issues at play. We've established that government business can continue with people working remotely. The question is once the pandemic is over, how many of those people would prefer to work remotely, and how many would prefer to commute and work in an office setting? And then the other question has to be in terms of the federal government, the municipal government, is do they want those people to work remotely, or would they rather have them work in an office where productivity could be better gauged, right? So I think that has to be determined first. Like I said, I'd love to see a survey of the remote working and whether people want to continue afterwards or not, right?
Right.
I would think that if their kids are in school, they would prefer to work at home. If they're at home and trying to raise their kids and work at home, and that might be a different result. But I think we'd have to determine that first. And then again, it would be up to the employer to decide how they want to continue.
What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think first of all, there's a lot of thinking the city needs to do around this, and they do talk to the federal government quite a lot with respect to their land use. I know when the LRT was being built, they talked with them extensively around time shifting employees and that type of thing.
Okay.
I do think that there's a lot of reasons why people choose to live in Ottawa, even civil servants, and it's not just simply because, this is where they have their job. They make decisions like every other person, to choose to live in Ottawa because it's consistently rated one of the best cities in the country, sometimes in the world, to live in. So, even civil servants have to make their decisions to live here for reasons other than employment. With respect to the government, I think that whether or not those employees necessarily go back, to Tunney's pasture or, another government complex or hub, for 5 days a week, if they remain in Ottawa, then the economic footprint is going to shift, but it'll be a net zero loss because it'll just shift to some other part of Ottawa.
Yeah.
Ultimately, though, if the federal government winds up divesting its need for property, that could be a good thing too, because if we embrace it as an opportunity, there's your connection back to the opportunity to create more affordable housing in central areas of the city. I know back when John Baird was a minister, there was discussion around could we redevelop Tunney's pasture and create housing opportunities there. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing if we embrace it.
Okay. One of the things that I'm hearing increasingly from the government when it comes to, do we really want thousands of public servants going into big office towers 5 days a week anymore, is maybe we don't necessarily need to do that, not just because of the post-COVID-19 workplace, but because we want to hit net zero on carbon emissions by the year 2050. And big government office buildings are a big source of greenhouse gases. And if we don't need to have that big land footprint by having people, say, do remote work or something like that, then maybe it's better for the environment that people don't go into those office towers.
Well, if that's the case, Rob, you better review your ridership projections for
OC Transit. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
Right now we have buses going around the city basically empty. I mean, I see them all the time and I don't care what OC Transport is telling people. I mean, you see it. It's there, right? With one or two people riding on an articulated bus. So if that's the case, and I think it's, if I'm an employer and I say, okay, do we leave it up to the employees that say, well, half your workforce want to work from home, the other half want to come in? Well, you're going to have a lot of space that's sitting empty. Is that the best use of our dollars? I mean, there's a lot at play here, right?
Yeah. Okay, so 3 weeks since the stay-at-home order came into effect for all of Ontario, 40 days since the Boxing Day lockdown. So Doug Ford, the Premier, has a decision to make really next week. It's Tuesday of next week. This thing is set to expire. We just had Randall Denley on. He thinks Ford is going to end this stay-at-home order and start reopening the economy. Do you think that would be the right decision? Fred Sherwin, what do you think?
Well, my opinion on this matter is no secret. I think absolutely. Our 7-day average for new cases is down to what it was when the Boxing Day restrictions were put in place. So yes, I think they need to start opening. Some of these things I don't think they should have closed in the first place. You have small businesses that get fewer customers in a week than Costco gets in an hour. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Mark?
Yes, and I think it is time to start looking at reopening. And I don't think we have to frame it, as we often do, as a trade-off between having safety or commerce. I think we can have both and live with the virus as long as we follow the existing and emerging guidance from public health. And that will allow commerce to resume more broadly and, the economy to start to reboot again, and people to continue to be as safe as they can be. As vaccinations roll out, slow that might be.
A great discussion this morning. Thank you so much to the both of you.
Thanks very much, Rob. Thanks, Fred.
Take care, Rob.
Yeah, Fred Sherwin, publisher of the Orleans Star. Mark Taylor, former city councillor for Bay Ward, now with the United Way. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, February 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -8 degrees. In Smiths Falls, -7. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Chief of the Kitigan-Zibi Nation has written a letter to the Mayor and Ottawa City Council outlining objections to the Algonquins of Ontario request for land it wants to develop be included in an expanded urban boundary. That will be discussed next week at the city level. Chief Dylan Whiteduck says in an opening line to the letter he has objections and concerns to the way the city is approaching reconciliation. Mayor Jim Watson had said in the past, including land the Algonquins of Ontario want to develop in the expanded city boundary would be a good step in reconciliation. The chief is demanding the city immediately consult with Algonquins on land development. As for the group Algonquins of Ontario, Whiteduck says they are not considered a legitimate representative of First Nations constitutionally held rights. Chief Whiteduck says they demand the city should immediately consult with them about Algonquin lands. The province has now administered more than 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines, but there are more complications on the delivery front, that is nationwide. Production problems have cut this week's delivery from Moderna by 20%. It comes after supply constraints cut Pfizer's deliveries by more than 2/3 over the past 4 weeks. Canada has now fallen out of the top 30 countries when it comes to the proportion of people who have been vaccinated. City News Time 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Lots of sunshine for us today and not as cold. The high near zero. The wind out of the west-northwest. It's a light wind, though. Becoming cloudy tonight, -11. And then tomorrow, periods of snow beginning in the morning, late morning, around 10 o'clock. 5 centimeters of wet snow possible. The high near 2. For today, the high 0.
And right now in Ottawa, it's -8. In Smiths Falls, -7 degrees. The Education Minister for the province making an announcement next week about March break and whether it should be cancelled to give students back some time they lost in the classroom. It comes as teachers' unions are reacting to the back-to-school plan. The rest of it announced yesterday. Here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
The Elementary Teachers Federation says the Ford government's back-to-school plan is inadequate and could contribute to a third wave of COVID-19. Harvey Bischoff with the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation says the province won't reveal the metrics being used to decide if schools are safe to open.
So how do we know that this is actually safe according to the medical experts rather than just another political decision made around the cabinet table?
Education Minister Stephen Lecce says the province's reopening plan was based on expert public health advice, and he tells Breakfast Television the idea of cancelling March break this year is being considered, but the Chief Medical Officer of Health will make the call.
The decision on March break will be based on that expert advice, and I hope to announce it next week.
Kevin Meisner, Queen's Park.
City News Time 10:03.
Sometimes when we touch.
Dan Hill is headed to the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. The Toronto-born singer-songwriter who had that hit, Sometimes When We Touch, in 1977, has been selected for induction into that home of the country's most influential songwriters. He is a 5-time Juno Award winner and built his name on a number of soft rock hits. But later in the 90s, he focused on writing lyrics for some of the most prominent singers of the era. That included songs for Britney Spears, the Backstreet Boys, and Reba McEntire. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Focusing on 2 months, March and September. 2 questions for you. Both related to vaccines this morning, and every single phone line is available right now, and this is your hour, and I'd love to hear from you. Vaccines very much in focus again for us. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310, The Rob Snow Show at ottawa.citynews.ca. On vaccines, on vaccines. Ladies and gentlemen, do you think Canada will get all the doses it has ordered by March, by the end of March? That is a line so often repeated by Mr. Trudeau and his cabinet ministers. What do you think? Do you think we'll get all the doses that we've ordered by the end of March? Question number one. And do you think you will be able to get vaccinated by September? You want to get a vaccine by September, you will be able to get a vaccine. March and September, those two timelines, those two deadlines, if you will, that you hear so often from those in charge, the Trudeau Liberals. Yeah, vaccines, vaccines, vaccines. I'm on it again. That's the major focus again for me this morning. And this is the talkback hour, so it's over to you. Have your say. I still think this is the biggest, most important story in the country, and I'm not letting it go. It's a story that changes by the day. There are developments on this story every day, and they are crying out for your opinion. At 750-1310, 750-1310. And I would include this angle as well. And this is a major development in this story as well. And opinions are mixed about it, about what Canada is doing here. And I'd also like your opinion on this. COVAX. Is Canada just taking what it's owed, taking what it bought, or is Canada robbing poor countries, poor African countries, for example, and developing countries, the third world, by tapping COVAX? COVAX. See, this program is all about fair and equitable access to vaccines across the globe. Run by an organization called Gavi, Vaccine Alliance, the Vaccine Alliance. And the thinking behind it is, yeah, sure, it would be nice if every Canadian was vaccinated against COVID-19, but as long as it is still circulating in poorer parts of the world, as long as the virus is still circulating in poorer parts of the world, we'll never be totally rid of it. And another part of the thinking behind Gavi, or COVAX, is poor countries can't afford the vaccine. So this is a way to make sure the wealthy countries don't hoard the vaccine. Plus, and the word used by Gavi is insurance. For wealthier countries, this COVAX system will serve as an insurance policy, quote, an invaluable insurance policy to protect citizens. So our government, led by Mr. Trudeau, it put money into this effort, $440 million, to make sure, at the time, this was the pitch, poorer countries will have access to the vaccines, but also with this investment, you could say we bought an insurance policy. And we could access vaccines through this deal as well, in case some of our deals go south. Well, lo and behold, I guess they have. The deals that we have are not working out entirely according to the original plan, so boom, we're making an insurance claim. And we're going to COVAX and we're saying, yeah, that vaccine that we acquired, that insurance policy that we bought, we'd like to make a claim on that, please. So there are a few ways to look at this. One is, and I'm seeing this in social media, one is, well, there are vaccines. It's our money. We bought the insurance. We need the vaccines. You took our money. Give us our vaccines. That's one way to look at it. The other, and I'm more inclined to kind of look at it this way, is it's embarrassing and really shame on us. It's actually an embarrassment that we're raiding the cupboard meant for poorer countries, which is really how this was billed politically and promoted politically from the very beginning by the Trudeau Liberals. You know, look, Canada, good global citizen. But how do you see it? How do you see it? Maybe you see it both ways. That's your thing. You could say, yeah, we're robbing from poorer countries, but we also paid for these vaccines, so they're ours. We need them to protect our own people. But the whole thing it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, I'll tell you what. It's just one more sign that not everything is going according to plan when it comes to the vaccine playbook from the Trudeau government. I mean, for crying out loud, it's only been 6 weeks and we're already tapping an international relief effort designed for poorer countries in the world because our own vaccine supply is drying up. Don't you find that kind of embarrassing for the country? Hey, COVAX, Gavi, whatever it's called, that $440 million we gave you so we could play nice guy on the global stage and tell everyone Canada is back. Yeah. Well, now I need you to do me a favor. Because our own agreements with the vaccine companies, they're a total mess right now, and we're taking an awful beating on the nightly news. I find the whole thing embarrassing, but that's just me. What do you think? 750-1310. 750-1310. Sam. Good morning, Sam.
Morning, Rob. How are you?
Sunshine Lollipops, buddy.
Right on. I mean, come on. Like, it's like, a parent getting fed up with their kid and just telling them whatever they'd like to hear at the end of the day. I feel like at this point now, the media with Trudeau, when they ask him questions, it's like the other day about this building. It's going to be done in July. We find out later on throughout the day that it's probably not going to be ready till, mid-December of 2020, if not into 2021.
Yeah.
I don't think Mr. Trudeau understands what construction is. I don't think he even knows what a screwdriver looks like, to be honest with you. Construction projects always tend to run a little bit late. I work in the industry. I know what it is. My biggest problem with it is we broke ground. We're building this new building. There is a building next door. Why can't we, in the meantime, use the building next door while we build your new facility to, pump out $2 million a week? Why can't we make $500,000 a week in a new building? The other thing that got to me really a lot was the fact that we, come out with this big agreement that we have a contract with them to make our own vaccines here in Canada, to distribute Canada vaccines. But neither of the vaccines that he's made a contract for are accepted by Health Canada yet, or approved, by Health Canada yet. What good is that to us right now?
Right. Yeah. For example, what you mean, the vaccine that would eventually be manufactured at this Montreal facility, it's not approved by Health Canada yet. Why can't they get on the same page, right?
Well, that's the thing, and that's just my thing. I understand from here to December to this year.
I mean, I'm sure eventually that Novavax vaccine will be approved. So,
but what happens? It's the what ifs.
What ifs? What ifs? Well, there's a lot of what ifs. Right? But I think one of the ones, Sam, if I could just interrupt, you've nailed one. We're talking about construction, right? And we're still in winter, right? Has anyone been following what it is like in terms of just getting raw materials now to do construction projects? Like, there is a massive renovation building boom on right now.
So
there are shortages of everything, right?
As a driver, I haul materials from quarries to sites or from out of sites to, dumps. There's been a lot of that going on. But where I think they run into issues is steel, lumber, the small things that come after. Big companies here in Ottawa, like Kavanaugh Thompson, as you know, they can pump out as much stone as you can. They what was it? A couple of weeks ago, they did a 6-month ratio of they pumped out 1.34 million tons of stone out of Moody Drive on Tomlinson.
Wow.
In 6 months. That's a lot of rock. Like, that's a lot of like you say, construction going on. Obviously, at 1.3 million ton of stone.
Okay.
So I think it's more lumber. Steel. I hear a lot about steel. My friend works for Belay. They have a hard time getting steel rebar on site. There is shortages around, Rob, and it's going to cause issues come the future, and it's going to keep being like that till I think the pandemic is over.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for your call. So, we have the whole COVAX situation. Feel free to weigh in on that. Doses. Do we have some audio of the Prime Minister yesterday in question period talking about this? He is sticking to these timelines. You can't shake him off of these timelines. March. You'll get your doses by March, don't worry. You'll be vaccinated by September, don't worry.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. We are continuing to expect shipments from Moderna this week and in the weeks to come. We will continue to advise the provinces as soon as we get concrete numbers on different deliveries. But yes, they will continue to deliver hundreds of thousands of vaccines across the country. We are on track to receive all the vaccines that we were promised by the end of March. That is 6 million doses from Pfizer and Moderna. And we are very much on track to getting 20 million doses in the spring, and everyone who wants it vaccinated by September.
Everyone who wants it vaccinated by September. End of March, everyone who wants a vaccination by September. You can't move them off of those timelines. Brian, good morning, Brian.
Hey, Rob.
Morning, Brian. Go ahead.
Trudeau's getting desperate there. He wants an election before the hangover hits. Okay, and this vaccine thing, you're right, it is the number one issue in the country, and it's a fiasco. And this bit about an insurance policy, that came right out of the PMO as a talking point. I'm with you, it's an embarrassment. It's more like he's stealing from the food bank. Okay? It's terrible.
Yeah. It's embarrassing. I find it embarrassing, actually.
Yeah. And worse than that is we have vaccine facilities in the country up and running right now making vaccines. Connaught Labs, who everybody blames the Conservatives for selling, is now called Sanofi.
Yeah, Sanofi, yeah.
Yeah, there's GlaxoSmithKline, who makes H1N1 flu vaccines.
Yep.
And there's a place in Alberta which Trudeau wouldn't even return their calls, who make vaccines. I believe it's Northern Therapeutics. And, you know, it's just we've got the stuff. Why give it to Quebec? Well, he's planning an election. It's all because of the election. Okay, everybody's suffering. And the third point came out of the UK. Their equivalent of the Surgeon General in the States said, we're never going to be rid of this stuff. It's going to be like the seasonal flu, and the vaccines will have to change every year.
Yeah, and even if that's the case, what's the big deal about that? People get a flu shot every year, so I don't see what the big deal about getting a COVID shot every year is. But it would be nice to have the domestic capacity to be able to do that.
Well,
Brian, gotta run. The sooner, the better. We're right back. Talkback Hour, 750-1310, City News.
So Rideau Rockliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Marketmobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Marketmobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they're both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Sportsnet. Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
We are continuing to expect shipments from Moderna this week and in the weeks to come. We will continue to advise the provinces as soon as we get concrete numbers on different deliveries. But yes, they will continue to deliver hundreds of thousands of vaccines across the country. We are on track to receive all the vaccines that we were promised by the end of March. That is 6 million doses from Pfizer and Moderna. And we are very much on track to getting 20 million doses in the spring, and everyone who wants it vaccinated by September.
Everyone who wants to be vaccinated will be vaccinated by September. Okay, so March and September. Do you think we will meet those goals set by Prime Minister Trudeau? That is his promise to you. Doses by the end of March, 6 million, and then vaccinations. You need to be vaccinated. Don't worry. September. And then there's the whole COVAX situation for COVID. Globe and Mail write-up on this today. Marika Walsh, Jeffrey York sharing the byline. Quote, Canada is the only group of 7 country to draw on a supply of COVID-19 vaccines meant primarily for developing countries, leading to fresh charges of hoarding against a country that is already a world leader in vaccine purchases per capita. But Canada is among just a few rich countries exercising its options now to buy vaccines from the international group. Other wealthy countries on the list receiving the vaccines include New Zealand and Singapore. Canada's vaccines expected to arrive at the end of June. The federal government defended its decision, saying it is always intended to draw from the international program in addition to contributing to the effort. In September, Mr. Trudeau announced government would give COVAX $440 million. Half of that was to allow Canada to buy up to 15 million doses. The rest would go to low and middle income countries so they can buy the critical shots. That's about as good an explanation as you'll come across this afternoon. It's kind of like an insurance policy, and we're putting in a claim. I just don't think it's a good look for the country. But I don't think you're out to lunch or anything if you feel, hey, we put the money in to make sure these doses were there. Well, we need the doses, so let's tap that supply. Where do you come down on that as well? 750-1310. Vince in Nepean. Wonderful place to be in. Nepean.
Good morning,
Vince.
Rob.
Yes,
I
sir.
got so much to say about these vaccines. I don't know if you have enough time.
Rock on, buddy. Go ahead.
Well, I'll go from square one. The same day that Joe Biden announced a promise to the U.S. that they will have 1 million doses of vaccines available for its first 100 days. You recall that?
100 million for the first 100 days, 1 million a day.
And within 24 hours, Pfizer came up with this production problem in Belgium. That's no coincidence to me.
Okay.
Now
I don't know if the two are related, but go ahead. Yep.
The other thing I noticed in the news is any American who wants a vaccine is getting it. Any American who wants it is getting it. Okay? And that's because the Americans put pressure on these manufacturers. We're being manipulated by the manufacturers. Our government's being manipulated, and the public is being manipulated. We were third in line to sign contracts with Moderna of all the countries in the world. We're just behind the UK. Okay? So
I'm not sure about that. But
that are to blame for all this, not our government. The other thing I want to say...
You're not blaming the government? You're blaming
the government at all.
You're not blaming the government at all.
No, our government, no. As far as we know, if they were third in line to order them, we should have gotten them.
Well, what about a 3-month dance with a Chinese company? Why did the government do that?
Well, they were doing all the options.
What about domestic? Hold on, Vince. What about the domestic?
No, that's my view on it. Anyway.
Yeah, sure. What about the domestic production of the vaccine?
That's what I'm going to say next.
Okay.
Back in the 80s, our esteemed former Prime Minister.
Brian Mulroney, yeah.
Mulroney.
Yes.
I'm reading it right now on the Toronto Star. Right now I'm reading it.
Must be true then. Yes, go ahead.
He privatized the Connaught Laboratories.
That's right. It's called, as our previous caller said, it's called a Sanofi. It's Sanofi now, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So now we're very good at this country at destroying things. But it comes
what are you talking about? It's not destroyed. It's still made. Vince.
Pipelines and stuff like that,
yes.
you know?
Okay.
So, you know, it's easy to blame the government in a situation like this. Sure. I don't think the government is to blame on this at all.
But you say it's been destroyed, that the plant has been destroyed. That plant is still making vaccines today, sir. It's just not making COVID-19 vaccine.
Look, if there's one thing pharmaceutical companies know how to do is make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. They don't have production problems. This is all a...
They don't have production problems.
This is all a ruse. Okay. No, they don't have production problems. This is all a ruse. This is all a ruse. Okay. Pharmaceutical companies do not have production problems. They have so many different production lines, more than an ant and an anthill.
Well, if they don't have production problems, why is there no vaccine supply in Canada, sir?
That's because they're giving it all to the richer countries who are producing it, who want producing more money for it.
Oh, I see.
Americans are giving billions. Okay,
right.
And it's an American
manufacturer. So then is it okay? If that's the case, can we accuse Mr. Trudeau being cheap when he's running the biggest budget deficit of all the G7 countries?
He's manipulated.
Oh, he's being manipulated. Okay.
Right. You know, now the other thing about Israel.
Well, you say manipulated. Some might say weak.
Well, I don't know about that. I can't say that. But the other thing I want to say is about Israel. You know, you were saying about Israel, the 16-year-olds getting vaccine.
17, yeah.
17-year-olds?
Yep.
Well, as a matter of fact, the president of Pfizer, his name is Albert Bourria, and he is a descendant of Holocaust survivor and victims. And one thing he said before this vaccine was produced, he said, as soon as we get a vaccine, Israel will be first in line. And that I read.
I don't know. Well, where did you read that? Where did you read that? I think you're just making. I think you have steered us into the realm of I'm just making stuff up right now. All right, see you later. Well, halftime in the Talkback Hour. Rob Snow Show 750-1310. Back after the news.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, February 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -6, in Smiths Falls, -5. And here's what's making news this hour. Province reporting another 1,563 cases of COVID-19 today from 64,500 tests. Also 88 more deaths. There are 46 new cases in Ottawa, 20 in Eastern Ontario, 3 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and there is 1 new case in Renfrew. The hotspots today: Toronto, 584 cases, 265 in Peel. Will March break be cancelled as a way to make up for some of the time lost in class for Ontario students? The Education Minister says that decision is going to be made next week and will be made by the Chief Medical Officer of Health. Federal Conservative Party leader Aaron O'Toole says the uncertainty is a failure to plan by the federal government. Uncertainty in COVID vaccine shipments. Now, both Moderna and Pfizer have announced shipment cutbacks to Canada. The government still says everyone who wants to be vaccinated will be by the end of September. The Ottawa Mission has resumed accepting clients now. That mission was hit with a COVID outbreak. If the mission does exceed capacity, there is still room at the Tom Brown Arena. That's being used as a temporary shelter. City News Time at 10:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
It's all about what's happening with Moderna now. We've moved on to Moderna. Nobody, from regular people like you and me to people in high office, provincial premiers, Trudeau speaking with premiers today, they seem to know, nobody seems to know why our shipments of Moderna are starting to dry up. This broke yesterday afternoon. That's what prompted questions in the virtual question period for Prime Minister Trudeau yesterday. This is what he said here.
We are continuing to expect shipments from Moderna this week and in the weeks to come. We will continue to advise the provinces as soon as we get concrete numbers on different deliveries. But yes, they will continue to deliver hundreds of thousands of vaccines across the country. We are on track to receive all the vaccines that we were promised by the end of March. That is 6 million doses from Pfizer and Moderna. And we are very much on track to getting 20 million doses in the spring and everyone who wants it vaccinated by September.
So March, don't worry, we're still on the March timetable. September, you need to get vaccinated by September. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Reassurance, right? Quoting from the public broadcaster news report this morning, Ottawa warns provinces to expect further disruptions to Moderna vaccine shipments this month. I always love it over in that newsroom. It's always Ottawa, when it's bad news, right? It's never Trudeau or Liberals. Oh, it's Ottawa in the headline. But maybe that's just me being picky. All the headlines used to say Harper government. The Public Health Agency of Canada is warning provinces that there will be yet more disruptions to the supply of Moderna COVID-19 vaccine shots later this month, according to a document obtained by CBC News. The company told Canadian officials last week the shipments for the week of February 1st would be reduced 20 to 25%, and now it appears this month's second shipment lower than expected. Health Canada website that forecasts just how many Moderna shots will be delivered to the provinces and territories each week has been scrubbed of any data related to the February 22nd shipment. And this is news coming from Ottawa, right? But it is a national issue because it trickles down to every provincial government, every city council, every town council, every legislature, every city hall, every public health board. See, Ottawa's big job is, buying the vaccine and making sure the vaccines get here. And then on down the line, lower governments are trying to figure out who gets them. How are they going to get them? How many days apart between doses? What facilities do we need? What staff are needed in those facilities? And this is what we're doing here in Ottawa. And they're working day and night. They're working day and night to come up with these plans and then fine-tune the plans. And then all of these best-laid plans get laid to waste because there's no vaccine to administer. Oh, the hits just keep on coming. The hits just keep on coming, don't they? Let's take another call here. Ron in Richmond. Ron, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Rob. How are you today?
Good, sir. I understand you're a first-time caller. Is that right?
I am.
Well, God bless you.
I've been listening to your show for a long time.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, sir. Very kind.
Have we thought about this? Maybe Trudeau's right in terms of September, in terms of our number of doses come March.
Could be right, yeah.
But the one thing he's not saying is in what year.
In what year?
I have to be honest, I'm 68 years old, relatively good health, and I do not expect to see a shot until spring of 2022.
Spring of 2022, okay.
And that's...
a little more than a year from now.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've spent, a lifetime in manufacturing, and looking at the pictures of the plant they're building there in
Montreal.
They're light years away. Have they ordered equipment? Have they secured the raw materials to make the vaccine? Or what about people, as I think you mentioned just a little bit ago? It's just not going to happen. Also, I'd like to mention that...
sir, I would suggest there's a great story, some wonderful journalism in the Montreal Gazette this morning. It's not paywall. Just go to the Montreal Gazette's website. All about that facility.
I will do that.
You read that story. They have an expert there, 35-year veteran of the pharmacy industry in Canada, who knows what it takes to get in a facility like that up and running. And he says you take as long as it takes to build the building, 6 to 9 months, say, under the best case scenario. But now we know these are not the best of times. There are global supply chain disruptions in every industry right now.
Correct.
Right? Let's say it takes 9 months to build the building, add 9 months for Health Canada officials to approve everything that's going on in there.
Yes. Yeah, that's just about right.
So he says months into 2022. Months into 2022, like April, probably.
Right. So,
which is a far cry from what Mr. Trudeau said on Monday or whenever that was, when he said, summertime. Right?
Yeah. Again,
more like April of next year.
That would be certainly more realistic.
Yeah.
I also have to chime in here. I am, as you are, totally embarrassed about having to dip into this insurance fund.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that when Canada made the donation, shall we call it, of the $440 million, that it was actually to help out the
developing world.
Exactly, the not so fortunate countries in the world. I did not expect that we would be one of them. For a G7 country, this is ridiculous.
Okay.
Just ridiculous.
All right, Ron. Thank you. Hang in there.
Take care.
Yes, sir. Call back anytime. Love to hear from the first-time callers. Brings a smile to my face. I'm not known to smile. 1039. 750-1310, 750-1310 for the first time all morning. A couple of lines available for you there. Murray, Kempville. Good morning, Murray.
Morning, Mara. Rob, long time no talk.
Murray.
Yes, indeed.
I recognize your voice.
Stay well, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Question number one, Mark.
Rob.
I have no idea why Mark. Do you want to be Mark?
I'll be Mark, just for this phone call, okay?
Your question number one. March for delivery?
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Maybe August, September.
Okay.
Question number two, my own personal vaccination. I, like Ron, I'm very skeptical.
About September?
Absolutely not. First quarter 2022 at best.
Okay.
A comment, if I might, Rob. This whole thing is a mess. It's a disaster. The handling, my own personal opinion, handling management, related deadlines, business dealings, absence of formal agreements and contracts has wasted millions individually and I believe potentially billions of Canadian taxpayer dollars on a cumulative basis. We're 34th on the list. Where the devil? What happened? I don't have the answers, obviously, but I have to wonder. With several newscasts recently have identified other opportunities within Canada for the development of vaccines. Those companies in Canada, small as they may or may not be, I don't know.
Yep.
Wouldn't it have been logical to inventory, someone in the Liberal government, inventory all of these companies and get on the ball quick like a bunny and see what they can do, what they are capable of doing for us before committing all of these millions, if not billions of dollars? What happened to logic? What happened to procurement? It seems to have gone out the window. I'm dumbfounded.
I heard an interview with Champagne. He's the innovation minister now. He had been the foreign minister, is the innovation minister now. And he said, well, if you take a company like Providence Therapeutics, for example, in Calgary, which had been begging for funding, had applied for funding, really at the behest of the government, and was basically in the same place from a research point of view as Moderna was a year ago. And now it says it's a year behind Moderna because Moderna received $1 billion in funding. Under Operation Warp Speed in the United States, whereas this company in Calgary received $4.5 million. So now it's a year behind Moderna. They had been basically in the same place. Now, Mr. Champagne says, well, it's about scale. We need companies that can scale up. So when the product is ready, it's ready to go out the door. Moderna had never made a vaccine before. Never made a vaccine before. Don't you think $1 billion, say $1 billion instead of going to the We Charity, for example?
Yep.
Maybe instead of going to the We Charity, maybe we give Providence Therapeutics $1 billion. Where do you think we are right now, Murray?
We're in disaster mode, right. Rob. I know you've got other callers.
Okay.
If I might be allowed to make one last comment.
Yeah.
The whole situation is shameful. Canada is in a disaster mode, really, and all of us, all we taxpayers and voters, we need to take note of what this tragic failure is, how it's going to affect us individually and collectively, and who's responsible. And we've got to remember that and keep that in our minds next time there's an election. I realize that this whole thing is brand new to our government. It's relatively brand new, notwithstanding SARS, and going back, which wasn't as bad. But it boggles my mind that Canada has not been able to cope. I don't think the federal government, the government of the day, I don't think they were able to in any way handle this appropriately or effectively. That's a very harsh criticism. I feel personally that that's right on the mark.
Okay. Thank you, Murray.
Take care, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a very old familiar voice to me. Warms the heart. 10:44 here. This is in the news today. Quote from Harrods. Quote, Israel is set to expand its coronavirus vaccination campaign to include Israelis of all age groups. The health ministry announced Wednesday. As daily vaccination figures drop and demand for the vaccine among priority groups decreases. Until now, vaccine eligibility has been limited to people 35 and older or those in specific priority groups such as medical workers and educational staff. Yes, teachers in Israel, they're already getting their shots. Health Ministry told healthcare providers to prepare to expand the COVID-19 vaccination program on Thursday to include anyone over 16. Anyone over the age of 16. Isn't that incredible? Benjamin Netanyahu's government says 77% of people over the age of 50 are already fully vaccinated, and the goal is to get that number to 90% in the next 2 weeks. And here in this country, we are spacing out doses for residents in long-term care well beyond their originally recommended time frame just to make ends meet. A lot of Canadians who are well into their 90s. And as for that, I will close this segment on this and then I'll come back on the phones after the break. As for that National Research Council facility in Montreal that the Trudeau government insists will be open and making vaccines by the end of this year, you read this is in the Montreal Gazette this morning. Quote, establishing a vaccine facility is an extremely complex, time-consuming process. It takes as long to have a plant certified under good manufacturing practice regulations as it does to build one, which means the Montreal plant would not be ready until late 2021, Robert Van Exen said, a man with more than 35 years' experience in the vaccine industry working with Sanofi Pasteur. After that, it takes another 6 to 9 months before a protein-based vaccine like the one created by Novavax can roll off the assembly line. Another 6 to 9 months. End quote. So, summertime? No. December? No. April, if we're lucky. April, 14 months from now. And yet the Prime Minister stands from his perch at Rideau Cottage and says, summertime, summertime, good news by summertime. As our callers have said, of what year?
The location is unique. There's, as you can see, it's open, and we have large windows. You can sit down and you can look outside. And this scene is not many scenes like that in Ottawa anymore with the high buildings. And we have the train station to the west of us. We have the train yards to the south. We have Saint Laurent Shopping Center, not far from here. And OC Transpo, not far from here. And the train, the light train, again, is not far from here. You can find breakfast. The breakfast, it was 7 or 8 years ago, it was one of the best five restaurants in Ottawa. One of the five best breakfasts in Ottawa. 7 or 8 years ago, it was in the Citizen. And our club sandwich is voted by customers the best in town. And the pea soup, too, is voted the best in town. We sell, we make pizza, we make Italian food, Lebanese dishes. Many customers describe it as it has the prices of the 60s, very reasonable prices. And the food, many say the best in town, not me. Many customers say that. It was a shock. It was a shock. And we went from doing well to barely doing very little. We relied heavily on the takeout, and the takeout was not that much. There was some. I hear from many customers that they are willing to come and sit inside. They're not afraid of the spread, as long as we wash our hands, sanitize everything, and wear your mask and keep the distancing. Most or all our customers are okay with that. So they are against the lockdown, They are supporting us a lot. And if it wasn't for the community loyalty, we wouldn't be here today. So I have to thank them for their support so far. It's been great.
Back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
8 minutes. We have 8 minutes left in the talkback hour. Let's make it the best 8 minutes of radio ever conducted. 750-1310. Dave, no pressure. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Rob. First of all, I'm in total agreement with the last caller, Murray, and with everybody else. Trudeau messed it up from day one. As you said, he danced with the Chinese government who then thumbed their nose at us and everything else, and that's another whole story that I won't get into.
Yep.
He's messed it up. He won't, as you said, move off the mark. It's a total screw-up, and all we need is more people like Vince to call her before the news to keep voting for Trudeau, and then we'll be well on our way.
He's very charitable. He's very charitable. It's all the company's fault.
Oh, exactly, yeah, and Trudeau didn't even make a misjudgment, and he wasn't being played. You know, it was all everybody else's fault. You know, look over there, it wasn't me. And to take those vaccines from COVIDs, whatever it is, that
COVAX, yeah,
that is utterly disgraceful. It's like the guy said. It's like giving money to the food bank and then going back and say, "I want my share back again." We have not any need to go there. We're taking vaccines from poor people in poor countries so that those of us here in Canada in the middle class and working hard to join us can jump the queue. And I've told you before, I think of Trudeau. I wouldn't trust that as far as I could throw it.
All right, Dave. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move along here. Rob in Nepean. Good morning, Rob. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Yes, sir.
You know, Canada has become the Ottawa Senators of the vaccine procurement. Okay? Actually, Ottawa has one more win. But, okay?
All right.
I wish Trudeau had to put as much effort into acquiring these vaccines as he had with the acquiring the seat in the Security Council and the UN. You know, he put a lot of effort into that.
Sure did. Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be the same effort here. So, as far as your question, I think.
So let's go through this. Yeah. March. He says we'll keep getting all these doses will arrive in March. What do you think about that?
Well, it's always in the future, right? And our memory seems to be short.
You'll get you can be vaccinated, Rob, by September. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I see a pattern of distraction, and I think the ultimate distraction will be probably an election before then, when he sees where the trends are, and if he's going to be on track, whatever, he'll have a lot of information to distract us, and I think that's where we'll probably forget. I doubt it very much because everything seems to be put off into the future. So,
what do you think about this COVAX situation?
That is another pattern. That's a butt saver. Okay, that's like a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
That's like bringing up one of our draft picks and putting him on the first line.
Okay. All right. Well, probably not a bad idea at this point if you're the Ottawa Senators. Anyway. Okay. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Yeah. Good call. I love the Senators comparison there. Marie.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Marie.
I just have one thing to say. In all the years that I've called your show, and it was a lot over the years, not as many as I would like, but whatever, I have never been so embarrassed to call and say how embarrassed I am today for our country. What he has done, if that's not a defeat in an election, I don't know what is. He's taken away from vulnerable countries just so that we gave them the money so they could get the vaccines because that's the only way they could get it. And now we're going and taking it back. It's horrible, it's shameful, and it's disgraceful. But I'm going to go one step further with that, if you don't mind. I know you have other caller there. excuse me, the people say, okay, he's going to call an election. Trudeau was sitting in the driver's seat, and I hope all Canadians realize that, because if he brought out something that the Conservatives or even Singh can't vote against or can't go for, and they call an election, who's going to be punished for calling the election? O'Toole. But so he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. If he votes against something and then they fall, it's the Conservatives' fault. Like, he's sitting in the driver's seat, and it's time, damn well time, that this country sits up and takes notice. And that they're taken away from those poor people. If that's not enough to tell you what this Prime Minister is made of, I don't know what it's going to take.
Okay, thank you, Marie.
Rob.
Thank you, Marie. Barhaven, Jason. Good morning, Jason.
Morning, Rob.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to thank you for keeping talking about this. I know you probably don't remember, but I called 2 months ago. We were talking about right at the beginning of the lockdown, Boxing Day, and I asked, why aren't we talking about vaccines? They'd just been approved. But, I mean, I think Trudeau needs to go back to teaching drama, because everything coming out of his mouth is fiction. This is crazy. And the thing that really worries me is that there are a lot of people out there like Vince who are going to keep this guy around. And, I mean, we're all just paying the price for it. And never mind the embarrassment. I mean, taking back these vaccines is from people the countries that can't afford them. It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. Yeah, I find it embarrassing. Yeah.
100%. Anyway, we got to go here. So.
All right, Jason. Thank you, Jason out in Barhaven. Last call. Yeah, one more. Yeah, I would take one more. Riverside South. James, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir.
So taking vaccines from the COVAX supply, it is embarrassing. We as a G7 nation should not be doing that.
Okay. We're the only G7 country doing it.
Correct. It's embarrassing.
All right.
2, in terms of the plants, I was talking to Dave there. In terms of retooling, I guess one of the plants that we have that produces vaccines now, it might take, I think, he said that Eric said that it might take at least 8 months. I mean, you know what? That brings us to August? Maybe we should look at that in a constructive way.
Yeah, okay, say it takes 8 months. Say it takes 8 months, okay?
Yep.
We are...
August, yeah.
We're 11 months into the pandemic already.
Oh, I know.
So why didn't we do this 3 months in?
Oh, I know.
Right?
I hear you. I agree. It's just to be somewhat constructive. You know, just we are where we are, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I guess the last thing is you don't expect. Obviously, politicians lie a little. All right, they all do. But you don't expect someone to stand up and say, I guess he seems convinced, right? So, you always say, okay, maybe it's possible this happens, that we do get our vaccines by September, and he knows something we don't.
Maybe he knows something we don't know.
Right. But if he actually knows that we're not going to get our vaccines by September, like, it would be a lie of Nixonian proportions. Like, Nixon would look good. Like, it's just
okay.
Like,
Right.
I just hope that he knows something we don't. And I don't vote for the guy, but it's just, it would be so depressing to think that we have to wait another year.
Just a little bit sneaky. All right, James. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. That was a busy hour. That just flew by. Thank you so much. We'll do that again tomorrow when it's the Friday free-for-all, and you get to pick the topics, and I just kind of sit back, take it easy. Coming up next, something totally less controversial, oil pipelines. On the Rob Snow Show on City News.
City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, February 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -6. In Smiths Falls, -5 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Federal Conservatives are slamming the federal government following more concern and criticism around the vaccine supply in our country. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney with the latest.
With more vaccine shortages and concerns growing, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole taking aim at the federal government.
Much of this uncertainty is due to the failure to plan by the Liberal government.
Pfizer shortages have already been causing major disruptions in the vaccine rollout. Now it's Moderna. The company already said Canada's shipment this week could be reduced by up to 25%, and now the shipment at the end of the month also being cut, but no word by how much. O'Toole also joining in the criticism of the feds for planning to accept up to 1.1 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine pending approval through the COVAX initiative. Countries that bought in would help provide doses to underdeveloped nations while also procuring some for themselves, but Canada's the only G7 nation taking its doses in the first round. O'Toole again saying this is an example of the feds having no plan on vaccines. However, he refused to say whether he would accept the COVAX doses if he were Prime Minister. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News time, 11:02. Forecast for today, sunshine through the day with lighter winds and a high of 0. Tonight down to -11. Periods of snow for tomorrow. That will start in the morning. We're expecting about 5 centimeters and a high of 2. Right now, -6 in Ottawa. It's -5 in Smiths Falls. The province is reporting another 1,563 cases of COVID-19 today. Those numbers come from 64,500 tests done. There are also 88 more deaths in Ontario. 46 of the new cases are in Ottawa, 20 are in Eastern Ontario, 3 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 1 more in Renfrew. Hotspots today, Toronto, 584, 265 in Peel region. On the heels of the Education Minister announcing when some other schools in the province can reopen, the rest of them, the topic of March break is now front and center. Whether that will go ahead as planned or be scrapped.
Some argue canceling March break would help students catch up on their lost in-class time and further discourage travel and social gatherings which might happen during a week off. Education Minister Stephen Lecce tells Breakfast Television that idea is being debated, but the ultimate decision will be made by Ontario's top doctor.
I've sought the opinion of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. The decision on March break will be based on that expert advice, and I hope to announce it next week.
Harvey Bischoff with the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation tells me he's not a fan of the idea.
Students and their families who have been supporting them during remote learning are exhausted. I know that educators are exhausted. I believe people need a break.
Ontario students go back to class in person on Monday, except in Toronto, Peel, and York, where schools reopen after the Family Day long weekend. Kevin Meisner, Queen's Park.
City News time, 11:04. The Ottawa Mission has resumed accepting new clients after the shelter dealt with a COVID outbreak this past month.
Ottawa Mission CEO Peter Tilley says there are some beds available, provided new clients haven't stayed in the shelter system within the past 2 weeks. He tells City News spread of the virus isn't limited to just the Mission.
What we're seeing now is a spread that's amongst our entire population, so we're having to work with partners beyond the shelters, drop-in centers, etc.
He adds with the limited space at the Mission, new clients will be diverted to the Tom Brown Arena if capacity is exceeded. Alex Gouge, City News.
And the Parliamentary Budget Officer is estimating it will cost $131 million over 5 years to equip RCMP officers with body cameras. That is based on data from Toronto Police, but the costing note says that price tag could actually be higher, equipping Mounties in rural and more remote areas. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM
and 1310 AM.
If these weren't the pandemic times, I think this story about the Line 5 pipeline, the Enbridge pipeline known as Line 5, it would be national news, it'd be front page news, it'd be leading late night news. And why? Well, let's get into this issue. Dan McTeague is back, President Canadians for Affordable Energy. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
What is Line 5?
Line 5 is a crude and natural gas liquid pipeline. That basically is liquids used to make propane. And it brings in light, sweet crude all the way from Alberta across Wisconsin into Minnesota, into Michigan, and then crosses over from Port Huron into Sarnia, Ontario, providing all four refineries in Ontario, as well as a good portion of the Quebec Suncor refinery in Montreal, with the lion's share of the oil they need to turn oil into products like plastics, polyethylene, gasoline, diesel, and of course jet fuel, 100% of which comes from those refineries to support Canada's largest airport, Toronto Pearson International. So a pretty important piece of infrastructure for Canada's energy needs, and unfortunately, it is virtually the only one that provides Canadians with Canadian oil as far as Montreal, Quebec is concerned.
I said yesterday, when you read about it, it sounds as though it's the closest we have right now to Energy East.
It is
right?
Energy East, except that the problem is we now have the Energy East pipeline, which is a natural gas pipeline, which goes right into Ontario. One would think that if we had a problem here, this would have been a great fallback plan, but of course our federal government killed that, and for obvious reasons, we're now in a significant position where a decision could be upheld by the governor of Michigan, which would pretty much jeopardize all of central eastern Canada's energy supply, and it's no laughing matter. It just means that we can quibble about the $90 to $1.20 a liter you will be paying. I think the bigger issue is you probably won't be able to find fuel. And of course, it will bring Eastern Canada's economy right to its knees.
Wow. There's an easement that was granted in 1953. It allows that pipeline to cross the Straits of Mackinac. So it goes underwater. That's right. And Gretchen Whitmer is the governor of Michigan, and she is she's very afraid about. I suppose maybe it's legitimate. The regulator doesn't seem too concerned about it, but concerned about an oil spill and what it could do to Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, right? So
I think we're all aware of that. Yeah. But in 68 years, there's never been an incident. And the pipe, I should point out, under the Straits, the two pipes. Normally pipelines have a certain diameter. This one's three times thicker. So it would take an atomic bomb to really knock it out or to break it. But that's aside from the fact that Enbridge has been for the past 4 years been proposing to and willing to spend the $500 million to actually build a tunnel well under the Straits over the 4-mile extension in which to put the pipes. So there's no question of a strike by say an anchor from a ship or any other kind of unforeseen event. So a perfect record would continue to remain intact. And the good news, of course, in part was the environmental department in Michigan approved it, but that doesn't and has not stopped Gretchen Whitmer, her Green allies, who are now well ensconced and very strong in the Biden administration, including the Minister of Transport, or the Secretary of Transport, Pete Buttigieg, who campaigned for the Democratic presidency not more than a year ago, calling for that pipeline to be shut down. So I think the issue here is not so much what happens in the next 90 days. It's pretty clear that there is an agenda to shut down all pipelines, including Line 3, one that doesn't get a lot of discussion, but is already well underway. Both sides approved it, and like KXL, proven that this would not increase carbon emissions, and yet the opponents smell blood, and they have the power to kill it. And my guess is that they're likely to do just that.
Okay. So Imperial Oil this week said it doesn't think this shutdown is going to happen. Do you think it's underestimating the political will of the Michigan governor right at this point?
I think Imperial Oil is, while the same comment, because it has two refineries in Ontario. Yep. The one in Nanticoke producing about 110,000 barrels, and the other one, of course, in Sarnia at about 90,000 barrels. So they're drawing 200,000 barrels a day, or about a third just more than a third of what that pipeline can deliver. I think they're doing so with crossed fingers and hoping this thing goes well, but they have also implemented in the same breath a plan, an alternative plan to move by rail, by tanker into the Great Lakes, which you can do for a part of the year, but it's not going to compensate. Rail would only be able to take about 10% of the compensate 10% of the loss. Tankers on the Great Lakes a little bit more, but it requires better loading facilities and, of course, a reconfiguration of your pipelines, because it's nice to say, well, I got a refinery, on the St. Clair River, but I don't have the loading facilities or the unloading facilities to accept crude. So it's going to be quite a nightmare, and it does mean that the infrastructure needed to compensate isn't there. But perhaps the silver lining here, Rob, is that we would see a circumstance where perhaps it's time to reopen Energy East, at least as far as Ontario, because the pipeline is already here.
Now, you said something very interesting, because a lot of the attention has been on, well, what is this going to do to the price of gas? What is this going to mean for the price of gas if we can't refine gas, or there's a disruption in the refinery process, getting the crude actually into Sarnia to refine the stuff, and into the facilities in where are they? They're around Lévis, I think, aren't they, in Quebec?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. This Romuald, St. Romuald, and for the Jean Gaulin facility.
Right. But you're saying the issue is not going to be the price of gas or the price of jet fuel. It's going to be, can you get gas or can you get jet fuel?
That's right. The supply is there. When you have 540,000 barrels of oil suddenly missing or can't get there without being significantly disrupted, you're not only going to have to elbow other people off what they call pipeline allotments, allocations. You're likely to, nominations, I think is the word they use, you're going to send the price to the roof, and there's going to be disruptions, significant disruptions. And since all 4 refineries in Ontario depend almost entirely on this pipeline, it's likely a scenario where a good half to 3/4 of all gas stations would have to close down. And I'm not being trite or fear-mongering, but Pearson International Airport gets 100% of all of its jet fuel from Sarnia, and so through a pipeline. So if they can't produce, it's, fly over Pearson. You guys get a little bit busier in Ottawa.
Wow, that's incredible.
Well,
surely to goodness, though, if it would impact Ontario that much, it would impact Michigan too, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there are 2. The big refinery, Marathon Refinery in Detroit, is also looking at a 30% cut. But it can reroute. Americans have been allowed and permitted to build tons of pipelines, while Canada has sort of navel-gazed and done a lot of henrying, so that we don't really have any options. They do. It's going to be a little more difficult, as are the 2 PBF energy refineries in Toledo, in the Ohio state, and even Pennsylvania to some extent. What this does, though, is it forces all upper Midwestern, central U.S., eastern seaboard U.S. refineries and Canadian refineries to compete now for less oil. And while there's plenty of oil out there potentially, it will arbitrage. It will drive up the price dramatically, not to mention, of course, the logistical nightmare that cannot be resolved in 90 days. So I'm hopeful and optimistic. Enbridge has basically said, in the same way that the great American general at the Battle of the Bulge said, Bastogne nuts when told to surrender. I think Enbridge is saying the same thing to Gretchen and her gang. But Rob, for some time, and you and I may have talked about this 2 or 3 years ago, in my previous job at Gas Buddy, speaking with a lot of U.S. emergency management people, especially those in Michigan, they were pleading with me to get the government to actually pay a lot more attention. And they weren't just referring to the Ontario government, which has, of course, responded, but the federal government, who up until 2 weeks ago really wasn't engaged in this issue. And I think it's woefully neglectful that we would wait to the last second to start to say maybe it's time to talk. But my old friend of the House of Commons, NDP member Joe Cole-Martin, who's now our consul general in Detroit, is getting nowhere with this government, and that does concern me. But it does also, I think, ring true. It's time for Canadians to have a reset and thought. We need more pipelines in this country, especially given that we may very well see a strategic supply, like our oil, cut off for no reason other than the fact that we have a very significant and very disturbed green agenda, cutting down and cutting off every pipeline they can, when they can, and where they can. And this one seems to be prime for the picking.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Pleasure being here.
Yep.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep. Dan McTeague is the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. He's also a former Liberal member of Parliament. It's 11:16. This is City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. It sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
There's no business like show business. And show business is booming in Ottawa. Film production, television production, Bruce Harvey is here. He is the film commissioner of the Ottawa Film Office. Morning, Mr. Harvey.
Good morning, Rob. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
What do you do there at the Film Office in Ottawa? What is the role of the Ottawa Film Office?
Well, the primary role we have is to attract film production, TV production, streaming production from producers and production entities in North America, to have them come to Ottawa and make their projects here, and to work with our crews and our cast here and use our facilities and spin the economy up in Ottawa.
Okay. What's that pitch like? What are our selling points?
The major selling points I think everyone in Ottawa would recognize is our locations that are available here, the diversity of them. We have some very unique locations in Ottawa that aren't anywhere else in the country. Our museums are fantastic. The Diefenbunker, the research facilities that the National Research Council has, the different looks of our residential communities. But we have a vast range of historical periods covered in our residential areas, from suburbs to the inner core, to big urban towers. So that's a really big thing.
Okay.
The fact that we have probably around 4 crews that are working fairly steadily right now. So we have a workforce that can actually handle the production. The incentives that the provincial government puts out are world class, competitive. It works very well. They're stable, which is not the same that can be said for everywhere else. That's great, and those are the main things that attract production to Ottawa.
Okay, so you talked about the facilities that we can offer. Give me a sense of that. What do you mean by that?
Well, facilities is a couple things there. One of them is a weakness of ours, and that's the missing soundstage, and we can always talk about that. That's a pretty hot topic right now in Ottawa for us.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's also companies that can provide equipment, and we have now we have 2 local equipment houses that have equipment that they can provide to production, so that helps a lot. Yeah. The fact that we have lots of car rental companies, broad choice of hotels that are here that people can use. Okay. We have a lot of film-friendly businesses that will allow people to film in their locations. We've got I think if you looked at our website and saw the film tour programs that we put together, walking tours before this current lockdown, where people could see where films have been shot in Ottawa and what businesses have supported them, you'll see that we do have a broad support across the city for film and TV.
Okay, so what is the status of the soundstage?
Well, the soundstage is probably the biggest thing that was hurt by COVID for a number of reasons. One,
this is supposed to be a $40 million project, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the plan. It's not it's not the dollar value that's the key thing for us. It's what it's going to actually provide, which is it's going to provide a number of sound stages, which you have to have at least 3 to be able to attract large-scale dramatic series. And for Ontario, that's where we see the major growth happening, is in dramatic series, whether it's for streamers or for traditional broadcasters. So to be able to attract that, we need that. And then you need the other facilities to go with that. So you have to have carpentry shops. You have to have production offices for those production companies that are coming in to film their activities. You want to have long-term production offices for the local companies that are here. You want to have space for training. You want to have a co-working space so people in the industry here can all come together in a local hub and share ideas and grow from there. So it's all of that together that makes it work for us.
What would you say is you must have a number that you can kind of toss out, the economic impact of the film and television industry in Ottawa on the economy of Ottawa?
It's right now direct spend, and this is not spinning the numbers. I know there's a lot of debate as to what factors you put on. If someone spends $1, it creates $6 of activity. So we're not doing any of those multipliers, but just looking at what is actually spent in Ottawa is between $100 and $120 million a year. Wow. And what's really good about it that I always like to point out is that that's foreign money. That's money that's not coming from the pockets of people that live in Ottawa right now. That's coming from outside the city into our city and staying here and then being spent throughout the community. So it's a very positive spin, a positive story.
I would say so, especially now, of all times. So business is booming, right? Very busy, very busy. Yeah, why is that?
Very busy. Well, a couple of things. One, we've got a phenomenal animation community here in Ottawa. We've got 5 or 6 major studios that produce for the top buyers around the world, whether that's Netflix or Amazon or the broadcasters, Disney, and they have world caliber content. And that sector is booming during COVID because it was an area that initially took a little bit of a hit because they had to move all of their employees out of their offices, get them working from home, create the digital environment where they'd be able to share their servers and create their product. But now it's going gangbusters. And the streaming community in particular and broadcasters realized that when live action was shut down in that March to July where nothing was happening, animation was continuing. And so even for companies like Big Jump in Ottawa, they were able to create animated episodes for what were traditionally live action TV series. And they did that for a couple of series where the producers said, okay, we can't shoot our normal production. So we're just going to create an animated segment for that show. And they were very successful and it was fun. And plus the demand for new shows as well. So that was one side. On the other side, we have a history in Ottawa of being a very reliable producer of TV movies. or streaming movies, or whatever you want to call them, those, the
Hallmark type thing, those
Hallmark
things.
or Lifetime is a really good example. Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And so those type of shows were quicker to get up and running. And the big reason for that is that because there were a shorter time frame to produce, the risk that the production had to take to get started was less. Because if you could look and say, well, for this next 3 weeks, we can probably get the production in. Nothing's going to change on the numbers that quickly. If the province does shut us down, we're still going to be okay because we'll have everything in the can. And those were quicker to get up and running. The crew size was smaller, so the cost of all the COVID, and the COVID protocols that we're following on set are very extensive. It's a 50-page document, the guidelines and protocols that we agreed with the province and with labor. And, incurring costs on those for a small production, is in the tens of thousands of dollars. And for a major dramatic series, Canadian dramatic series even, it can be up to $1 million in costs, added costs for the production over the year. So, you can see for those producers, it was a big hit trying to figure out how they were going to keep their productions going, how they could restructure and meet, the safe environment that you have to be able to keep producing. And, where the province isn't going to let us keep going unless we follow the guidelines and we maintain those sets where everyone's safe. We don't interact with the public, so any shows that require audiences, those aren't happening right now. So, to try and work in a controlled environment and incur that cost.
Okay. It's good to have some good news. There's an industry that's booming for us right here locally, right?
Yeah, it is.
Does this present, outside of the kind of like the immediate, this creates local jobs, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
A lot of locals that are working in the industry
jobs. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Harvey, thank you for your time,
Thanks
sir.
a lot,
Yep. Film Commissioner of the Ottawa Film Office. Could you use some good news? That's good news, isn't it? Yeah. So all this week we've been talking about electric cars. I've been fascinated by this decision from General Motors. Been 15 years, we'll only sell electric cars. So we talked to General Motors earlier this week. Then we talked about the need for cobalt and lithium and all the rare earth minerals that go into making an electric car. What about the electricity grid? Lots of questions about that. We'll speak with the CEO of the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. If everybody's going to plug in their car, what do we need to do to the electricity grid? Coming right up on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, February 4th. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa, gorgeous sunshine and -4, wind chill -10. Smiths Falls, sunny skies -3. Here's what's making news right now. 1,563 new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario and 88 new deaths reported due to the virus. Resolved cases continue to outstrip the number of new cases in the province. Now, Ottawa Public Health has just reported 39 new cases in the city. The health unit reported 61 new infections yesterday. Elsewhere locally, according to Public Health Ontario, 20 new cases for Eastern Ontario, 3 for Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 1 new case in Renfrew County. Those numbers will be updated in the afternoon by the local health units. The numbers come out of over 64,000 tests. The percent positivity sits at 2.6%. It's one of the lowest figures we've seen in months. Hospitalizations are up, though, across the province slightly, and the number of patients in intensive care continues to decline. The number of active COVID-19 cases in First Nations communities has hit its lowest point since early December. Indigenous Services Canada reports there were 1,869 active cases as of yesterday. More than 64,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine have been administered to First Nations on reserve, Inuit, and in the territories. Parliamentary Budget Officer Yves Giroux says the number of people claiming a deduction for home office expenses on their taxes is likely to skyrocket this year. He's estimating the federal government could lose out on $260 million by letting people claim deductions of up to $400 depending on how many days they worked from home in 2020. The Liberals decided to simplify the tax measure because so many people have been working from home since last spring due to the pandemic. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
There are right now just shy of 9 million motor vehicles registered in Ontario. 9 million. Imagine a time, say less than 20 years from now, they all have to be plugged in. They're all going to be plugged in. The internal combustion engine is no more, and the electric vehicle is how everyone gets around. What has to happen to the electricity grid in the province of Ontario? Well, let's ask Sandro Perruzza. He is the CEO of the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. Welcome back to the program, sir. It's very nice to hear from you again.
Well, thank you for having me back. It's great to be back.
Is this something your organization has been investigating?
Absolutely. Every year, we get the numbers from the Ontario Energy Board to understand just how much energy we have in a province, how much is produced, and how much is actually wasted or curtailed. And I can tell you, based on 2019 numbers, and this was pre-pandemic when we were using more energy then than we were using in 2020, we curtailed or sold at a loss to external jurisdictions enough energy that cost the province approximately $1 billion a year. That's energy that we didn't use, that we either had to curtail, which means we had to, let water spill over our hydro dams, or reduce our energy production at our nuclear facilities, or turn off our windmills, and that energy that we couldn't do that with, and we had to sell at a loss. So we do have enough energy in Ontario right now, today, to support.
We have enough generator availability, right?
Enough generator availability, yes. Yeah. Right now in the province of Ontario to power 6.5 million electric vehicles.
Okay, yeah, because we have the installed capacity right now, if you take nuclear and hydro and gas and wind and solar and biofuel, all of that stuff, it's about 28,000 megawatts installed right now. Yeah. But as you said, we have a massive surplus, right?
And we have and then we also have energy on reserve that in case of, high energy demands on, which happens approximately 2 days a year, in extremely hot days or extremely cold days. But we have
a lot of that is natural gas, right? A lot of that is natural gas. Yeah.
So for right now, again, we have enough to support about 6.5 million electric vehicles.
Okay, so that's on the generator side, right?
Correct.
What about the transmission side, though?
Well,
would you have to make upgrades there, for example?
Well, yes, but As the adoption increases of electric vehicles, certainly need to, in some remote jurisdictions, increase our transmission lines and the capacity in transmission lines. But we're doing that now with broadband internet. So as we're increasing our building lines around broadband internet, we can also increase our transmission lines, our capacity of those transmission lines at the same time. This is the adoption is not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over the next few years, and we can certainly make those upgrades as needed. So it's not something that we're concerned about. In fact, we are actively advocating for the increased adoption of electric vehicles for a number of different reasons.
And those reasons being, say, in bullet point form. I mean, obviously, greenhouse gas emissions, number one, right? So,
exactly. First off, it's towards a safe, green, innovative, and integrated transportation system to support, as you mentioned, a green environment, but also boosting trade, economic growth, and public safety. Autonomous green. It's not just electric vehicles; it's autonomous vehicles. You mentioned earlier on that you had General Motors on your show, and they were talking about, only having electric vehicles in the next 15 years. In fact, they made an announcement yesterday that by 2025, which is only 4 years away, they will have over 30 models of electric vehicles available. So this is something that's going to happen very quickly. And we are encouraging the government to put back in the incentives that they removed in 2018 that actually promoted the adoption of electric vehicles. The other thing is, again, the economy, where everyone's talking about how we need to jumpstart the economy. If electric vehicles were to reach a 10% share in Ontario by 2025, in 4 years, Ontario will experience a GDP increase of over $3.6 billion. So, there's an economic case to be made as well.
Okay. From an engineering point of view, so you're really not concerned about the ability to produce the electricity that's needed, and the transmission is continually being upgraded and can be done in conjunction with broadband networks, you say, for example. What are do you think some of the other engineering challenges with this transition that's going to be happening, say, from internal combustion to electric vehicles over the next 15 years? What are some of the other engineering challenges that we'll have to overcome?
I'm not too concerned about the engineering challenges. Certainly, we're already working on it. The engineering community is certainly working on it, and the engineering community in Ontario and Canada is working on it. I can tell you that out in Nova Scotia, they're working on an electric battery that is going to exceed anyone's expectations around the charge capacity and range capacity of vehicles. They're talking about $1 million a kilometer or 1 million kilometer battery. That's off in about 10 years, perhaps that'll be viable. But the technology exists. Again, going back to General Motors, in a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, General Motors established their global engineering technology center here in Ontario. This wasn't just for GM Canada. This is for GM Global. So they are attracting the best engineers worldwide to come here in Ontario to develop the technology we need for vehicles. Ford is following suit. Everyone knows about the upcoming all-electric Ford Mustang. Ford announced that within the next, 6-7 years, they'll stop the production of the combustion Mustang and only focus on the electric one and other electric vehicles. And looking at the whole transportation sector, certainly there's an organization that OSPI is part of called CUTRIC, which is looking at how do we electrify our bus and rail system. And I think the rail system is really the biggest concern we have right now.
Oh, really?
GO Transit and Metrolinx wants to electrify the system, the whole GO system, and then VIA is looking at the same thing. And that is where I think we have a bit of a capacity issue when it comes to talent. It's not something when it comes to
what? Oh, talent.
Engineering talent.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the know-how. We really haven't built that engineering know-how and how to build electric rail the way they have in Europe per se. So I think, when you look at the companies that are bidding on these rail systems, most of them do come from Europe and overseas in Japan. And I think it's a capacity issue that we need to, a market labor capacity to really build the know-how in our engineering programs on how to build electric rail right across this country. But I have the utmost confidence in our engineering school to be able to do that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Thank you. That is Andrew Perruzza. He is with the Ontario Society for Professional Engineers. So you know what? That puts my mind at ease. All the time, people have been bringing that up to me. Professor Ian Lee, for example. Oh, the grid will never handle it. We'll need to do major upgrades to the infrastructure. Well, not according to the engineers. Okay, David says the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee at City Hall right now is talking about our farmers.
Would definitely not have caught up with the
This
increase
is Jan Harder.
in the affordability of land in our city.
So this is about the gold belt, I guess.
How we've run we don't have affordability anywhere in the city. And we heard that as recently as from Jason McDonald last week at our joint committee. So I don't, unless they can tell me or tell all of us that there's an opportunity for us as an individual city to change that, I think maybe a direction might be better and allow the gentleman to do what they want to do, which is go to the appeal process. So do either of you know that for a fact?
Well, first of all, I think we need to defer this item because one of the gentlemen didn't notice about this meeting till yesterday, and under Section 57 of the Drainage Act, they should have been notified before. Now, for whatever reason, Canada Post or other, they were not notified. But I think that, on the process itself, obviously, Mr. Robinson followed the process being set up by the guide. But if any changes, the municipality can make their own changes. But I don't think we are able to do changes right now on the fly, regardless. So I think we still should wait, and we should hear more from our staff what other municipality use for best practice.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't know that piece of information, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Councillor Muff.
Thanks. I would simply add that I know there's some concerns or discrepancy between the market value and the impact value. One thing of consideration that probably wouldn't have been an issue here today had it not been for COVID is that the impact assessments that we're dealing with are from 2016. They're quite outdated. That was supposed to get reviewed and completed in 2020, but was pushed off to 2021. So we're dealing with 5-year-old assessments, and that's not the norm. In this province is to have assessments that old. Normally these would have been updated by now, and we'd be working on updated assessments. So if we could, it is possible that we could talk in the meantime with MPAC, see if they have some information that could be pertinent to this discussion, that could give us a bit more direction on how we could properly assess these lands. I get the challenge with market value, but I think there is something that we should do because the discrepancy between market value and the assessment.
This is going to explode. This is an issue to keep an eye on. It's not unlike the Algonquins of Ontario Taggart urban boundary thing where decisions are made out of the blue and everyone's caught off guard and wondering what is going on. I thought Fred Sherwin said it best this morning when he said they've really opened up a can of worms when it comes to that decision and those 445 hectares near the Amazon building out here, near Carlsbad Springs. Because now you have the quote-unquote real Algonquins, their words, not mine, who are saying that this organization, Algonquins of Ontario, doesn't speak on behalf of them, and that their heritage, their lineage, members of the Algonquins of Ontario are, for some of them, it's dubious, it's suspect, tenuous, I believe is the word in Kate Porter's story this morning. So you have the chief of Kitigan Zibi saying you're dealing with the wrong Algonquins, and this is not reconciliation, it's wreckage. Reconciliation as in wreckage. So that is in the domain when it comes to this. And then this morning, Gold Belt, okay, and the future of agriculture land. And you basically just freeze all development along a chosen line on a map and say to a farmer who has potentially been farming that land for generations, maybe going back 150 years, if not longer, say to that farm, you're not allowed to touch that land anymore. It's untouchable. This is the talk in our agriculture economy right now. I took a call from a farmer this morning. It's all they're talking about. And they are not happy that they have not been, in their opinion, they have not been consulted. And this farmer told me, Rob, if it wasn't for COVID, every farm tractor in rural Ottawa would be parked on the lawn of Ottawa City Hall next Wednesday in protest of what has been happening with this Gold Belt situation. This is supposed to come up for a vote on Wednesday at City Council. This is like deja vu all over again. This is a replay of pre-amalgamation. This is landowners. This is Carleton County, back off, hands off my land. It's all of that and maybe even more. And pay attention to it. It's an important local issue. This is City News.
No Nut Butter is a business where we make allergy-friendly spreads, so alternatives to peanut butter, Nutella, or those kind of things that kids and adults like to have on toast or on a banana or on an apple, and aren't really available to people with severe food allergies or allergies to the top allergens. When you're an allergy parent, you read every label because you need to know the details of every ingredient that's in the products that you're going to feed your kid. So we found that a lot of the products that we were looking at had may contain warnings, which we can't have, and had just so many ingredients in them that you don't know if there's a weird unknown ingredient that is kind of disguised under a different name. So we started No Nut Butter so that we would have the opportunity to have products that were safe and free from the top allergens and had really simple ingredients in them so that you would know exactly what you were feeding your kids. We make 4 different products at No Nut Butter. So we make a pumpkin seed butter, which is our alternative to peanut butter. So it only has pumpkin seeds, roasted pumpkin seeds, and some kind of oil in it. So we usually use corn oil or olive oil. And then we make what we call Choco Pumpkin, and it is our alternative to a chocolate hazelnut spread. So it is our pumpkin seed butter with our chocolate spread, so very much chocolate hazelnut spread. We make a coconut caramel, so it is coconut milk and sugar, and it is our kind of vegan option for caramel, because typically caramel has lots of butter and dairy in it. And then we make an apple butter, which is apples and cinnamon and sugar, and that's it. We do also make a sugar-free pumpkin seed butter option because we have some diabetics and just some people who don't want sugar in their lives, and so we do offer that, but you'd have to custom order it. There are very strict rules around producing products, particularly nut-free products. You aren't allowed to cook in your own kitchen, which makes a lot of sense. If you have a dog, you don't want to cook in your own kitchen. But from a nut standpoint, it's just making sure that you have everything really clean and organized. So we cook all of our products in a commercial kitchen so that we can keep all of those health and safety procedures really tight and together. My personal business started a company called Shop Local Ontario during the pandemic, so we were pretty well equipped to go forward into the pandemic in a world of e-commerce and transacting online. You can find us online at nonutbutter.com, or you can find us on Facebook, No Nut Butter, or on Instagram at No Nut Butter.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So let's get the lowdown on COVAX and what Canada is doing with COVAX. We have Professor Joel Lexchin on the line, Professor Emeritus, School of Health and Management at York University. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
Yeah, very nice to hear from you. What is COVAX?
COVAX was set up back last spring as a way of helping low and middle income countries that couldn't afford vaccines on their own to access vaccines. The idea is that the rich countries donate money to COVAX, and then COVAX commits to providing the low and middle income countries with enough vaccine for about 20% of their population.
And what is in it for a country like Canada then?
Well, I mean, ideally, Canada is doing this because of humanitarian concern.
Right.
If the virus is allowed to run wild in low and middle income countries, it's going to mutate. It may get more deadly. It may become resistant to vaccines, and eventually those mutations are going to find their way back to rich countries, Canada, the United States, Europe. So if we don't ensure that everybody in the world is vaccinated, then nobody is really safe.
Yeah, what's the point of having it? You know, it would be nice to have everyone in Canada vaccinated, but if the pandemic is still raging in the developing world, then that's still a threat to the health of Canadians, right? That's
yes.
the thinking, right? Yes. Now under COVAX, though, Canada is, as I understand it, in reading some of the literature this morning, Canada is basically buying an insurance policy. It is assured a certain quota of doses. Fair enough?
That's right. One of the ways that rich countries like Canada were attracted to donate to COVAX was the promise of a certain number of vaccine doses. So you give money, and in return you get access to a certain supply that COVAX is going to have. The problem that we're now seeing is that rich countries, besides just donating to COVAX, are also cutting private deals with these same vaccine makers that COVAX is purchasing from, leaves fewer doses of vaccines for COVAX, such that right now I think the figure is 250,000 doses have been administered in all of Africa, so that's over 1 billion people.
Yeah, I think it's about 230,000 is the latest figure, right? So what is your reaction, Professor, to Canada's decision, the Canadian government's decision to basically tap part of its allotment of these vaccines, the only G7 country to do so? What is your reaction to that, Professor?
I'm appalled by what Canada is doing. Yes, we're entitled to it under the terms of COVAX, but to actually take advantage of that entitlement, given what's going on in places like Africa, Southeast Asia, a number of other places, I think that's really just obscene. Canada should be better than that.
Okay. And what would be better than that? Be patient, in other words, to get through some of these problems that we're having with securing supply right now?
Yeah. And also, I mean, if you look at the numbers, Canada has spent enough or bought over 400 million doses of vaccines. So it takes 2 doses of most of the vaccines to get full immunity. So we've got enough for 200 million people. In other words, we can vaccinate everybody in this country 5 times. What Canada should be doing is it should be announcing when and how much of that excess vaccine is going to be going to low and middle income countries. All we've said now is we'll donate some. We haven't said how much, and we haven't said when.
Okay. I thank you for your time, Professor.
Thanks very much for your interest in this.
Excellent. Professor Joel Lexchin, Professor Emeritus, School of Health Policy and Management at York University, on the situation with COVAX, reported on in the Globe and Mail this morning. It says, pending regulator approval, Canada will receive 1.9 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine from the COVAX program. It's listed among countries such as, and I think this is why the professor says he is appalled. It is listed among countries such as Rwanda, Afghanistan, and Sudan, which have yet to receive any vaccines, according to our World in Data website. The federal government defended its decision, saying, quote, it has always intended to draw from the international program in addition to contributing to the effort. As I said earlier, it is an insurance policy, and less than 2 months after buying this insurance policy, here we are calling the COVAX broker, and we are making a claim. We are making a claim. It is, it's not a very good look for this country. So that was a very interesting program. We were on top of a lot of things: COVAX and vaccines, pipelines, anger in the agriculture community, anger and frustration, and even some confusion among First Nations about planning issues. And $742,000 is now the average selling price for a house in the city of Ottawa. $742,000. My goodness gracious. Keep on buying the Lotto Max tickets. We're back tomorrow right after the 9 o'clock news. We will talk some sports tomorrow with Steve Warren. Lowell Green will be with us. Pierre Bourque as well. We'll have a little bit more on the anger that is raging in the farming community.
This program is brought to you by